back, everyone. I'm Tara Reid, your host. This is The Politics of Survival. And we're going to talk about some serious stuff, but also going to have a little bit of fun with it also. So I have with me from the show Redacted, that was recently redacted, and he'll explain how, Lee Camp. Lee, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So tell me about your show Redacted. It's redacted, but you're still moving on and doing your thing, and tell our listeners and viewers where they can find you and what you're up to.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I hosted a comedy news show called Redacted Tonight for 8 years, hosted and wrote, and 375 episodes and an interview show as well. So over 500 episodes total. And in the span of a week, that was shut down because all of RT America was shut down. All of the past videos were banned globally on YouTube. Over 1,000 videos and clips, all banned. And my podcast, Moment of Clarity, was deleted from Spotify. So all of that happened in the span of a week, which I think makes me one of the most censored comedians in America. People like to say that, Joe Rogan or Dave Chappelle are censored, but in fact, they're still on the largest platforms in the world. So right. I don't think that actually counts. So yeah, in many ways, most censored comedian in America, and it's for being anti-war, being anti-imperialist. So those are the type of things that are not allowed in a real, true sense on our media airwaves.
Yeah, the censorship has been pretty, as a matter of fact, the same day that your show was pulled down from Spotify, because your podcast was also pulled down, mine was also. Yep. No one noticed as much, but just, yeah, it was also, we were both pulled down on the same day on Spotify and on Google. And now when you go back and look for my shows, they have like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, but they took down Igor Lopotonik, and they took down, anyone with Russian connections, or anything lightly touching that geopolitical world was pulled down. Even Juanita Broaddrick, who has nothing to do with anything, but she came forward about Clinton. So they took her down for good measure. So.
well, yeah, that's our free speech and our free press and everything is so amazing. Our empire and our country are so amazing that they can't handle even the smallest bit of truth. Apparently, is anathema to the system.
Yeah, I mean, they pretty much we're getting one narrative and one lens right now coming through about the conflict in Ukraine and everything else. What is your kind of view right now about the anti-war movement in the U.S. and how that's going? As far as
it's got some amazing people in it. When I go to these protests or I do events with them, these are truly incredible individuals that work so hard, but it is tiny. There's essentially, almost no anti-war movement. And that's not an accident. That's by design. The consent for endless war has been heavily manufactured across all of our mainstream media airwaves. You can go down the list of people whose careers have been either destroyed or harmed because they came out against war. Pulitzer Prize winner Chris Hedges, of course, kicked out of the New York Times for being anti-war. Phil Donahue, #1 show on MSNBC, kicked out for being anti-war. Jesse Ventura was going to be a main show on MSNBC, and they paid him upwards of $10 million just to get out of his contract so he would never be anti-war on their airwaves. You can just keep going down the list, and that is the reality of our system. So the anti-war movement is very tiny. And of course, it is impressive, diehard people. So I don't want to say that those people don't do amazing things. But, you'd love to think that as we push ourselves closer and closer to nuclear Armageddon, nuclear winter, that there would be 1 million people in the streets demanding an end to this proxy war in Ukraine. But you just don't see it. There's just talk of sending more arms, sending more firepower. They've successfully gotten people to think that peace is war. Really endless war has come to us wrapped in a giant peace sign.
Yeah, you make some really good points. I mean, you were just actually because we were warned years ago, and we saw what happened to Julian Assange when he exposed the empire's war crimes, and he's now in prison and basically being tortured to death in front of us collectively. But you were just this weekend, in DC at a comedy gathering talking about Assange and all of that. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's a great series of shows that Randy Credico has put together. And if you want to see how ridiculous our media has become, if the name Randy Credico sounds familiar, it's probably because people know him as who the mainstream media for a brief moment pointed to as the cause of Russiagate. They believe that this 60-year-old comedian was the go-between between Assange and Roger Stone and Russia. And it's so utterly hilarious if you know the man and know how kind-hearted he is and what a great, comedian and guy he is. It's just hilarious. But anyway, so he's put together a series of shows for Assange. We did one in New York with Roger Waters and Cornel West and so many great people. I can't list them all. And then we've done 3 here in DC with, Katie Halper, Marianne Williamson, of course, Randy, Eleanor Goldfield. Again, can't remember or name them all. John Kiriakou, of course. And, for those of us who are comedians, Assange is not an easy thing to make fun of. So I don't spend a lot of my time of the comedy portion of the show discussing Assange, but because it's, it's too real and gruesome to, for me at this time. That doesn't mean that anything I think in comedy is off limits if you deal with it correctly. But so I generally, talk about other news stories, but then in the speaking portion of my show, I talk about how important Assange is and how he is the most reliable publisher, journalist, whatever you want to call him, that perhaps has ever lived, and nothing WikiLeaks ever published has been proven false. Not a single word. Compare that to CNN or Fox News, where every other minute they have to print a retraction.
Well, what was even more stunning is when, they got called out for Seal Island. Was it Seal Island? That was false reporting and some other false reporting.
Snake Island.
Yeah, Snake Island. And they got called out for the false reporting. And New York Times then said, well, yes, they didn't retract it, but they said, but this lifted people's spirits. And it was like, what? And that was like the propaganda, they were just admitting propaganda.
Exactly. The latest video, I just put it up about a half hour ago on patreon.com/Lee Camp. But the video is about how the Biden administration and our government has now admitted, and Kayla Johnstone covered this well, has now admitted that they are making up this stuff. They've said outwardly that they're in a break from the past, meaning this is not what used to be done. They are now taking a feeling or a vibe they had, and they're using that as legitimate news, even if a week later it becomes proven false. That's okay. Like all the reports that Russia was about to use chemical weapons and then they stopped talking about it. And, all the reports that they were going to pile bodies at Chernobyl and in a false flag, and all this stuff ended up being false, but it doesn't matter. It serves the purpose. And now the Biden administration has admitted this is made up intelligence.
It's stunning. Yeah. Like how they're just doubling down on it, on the propaganda, and just admitting, okay, this is the course of action that we're taking. We're going to get inside your brains and meld them to our thinking.
Yeah, and I just want to add one thing in case people, have it twisted. I am opposed to Russia's invasion. I'm also opposed to NATO's expansion. I'm also opposed to Nazis. Like, you can be opposed to all those things at the same time. And so I am opposed to Russia's invasion, but that doesn't mean I don't want the truth. That doesn't mean, lie to me all you want and I'll just repeat it like a moron. Like, no, I still want the truth.
Exactly. I think that's a really good point. And, the truth is what's being lost. And, we turn to independent media, we turn to international sources, and then they shut those down. Like they shut down RT. And like in Britain, how in England, they took their license away. They can't even broadcast in England. So it's interesting how it's been done. And then the technocrats here, of course. One thing I noted on your show, you were talking about something that everyone's just stopped talking about, and that's climate change and what's happening in our world. And, Oz, if you could bring up, I had a photo of an ice, a portion of the iceberg that just fell off that's the size of New York City. And, okay. So anyway, I had a picture of that, but we'll picture it in our heads.
Everybody picture a big iceberg.
Yeah. Everyone picture a big iceberg and then like the size of New York and it falling off. So that just happened. So you were talking to a scientist about this. And what was your kind of feel on that? Or your read on that?
It's actually a really interesting story. NASA scientist Peter Kalmus, who also consulted with Don't Look Up, the movie, but he is a scientist. He's not like an activist that does a lot of, let's go lock down the pipeline. So this was new to him. He, along with many other scientists, climate scientists, decided recently, last week, to get arrested, chaining themselves or chaining the doors of banks that are funding and supporting this destruction of our planet. And, he said it took a lot of, it took really pushing him to the brink. Like he wants to be a quiet scientist in a room, and that's what he's been doing for 15 years. But he looks around and he sees we are blowing past the ability to maintain even a slightly livable planet. And we're just acting like it's nothing. And it truly is incredible. And the way people are ignoring it is just mind blowing. And so, Peter Kalmus, I interviewed him just yesterday, and he along with many other, I think it was 1,000 scientists globally, but down in town, Los Angeles, 4 of them got arrested, blocking a JP Morgan Chase, I believe. Even the scientists are now, people who've never been to a protest in their lives are now chaining themselves to banks, saying, we don't have another option now.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. It's stunning, this is a very serious subject and it is very, sobering. And so I went ahead and got my own climate expert. His name is Tinfoil Timothy of Tybee Island. And We're going to go ahead and bring him on and see what he has to say. So Timothy.
I'm here. I don't know if you can see me. Probably not because of conspiracies. Yeah. A lot of times when you're trying to speak the truth, you're eradicated. I don't have to tell you that, Lee Camp. But my name is, they call me Tinfoil Timothy, but I don't call me Tinfoil Timothy. That started when I was in high school because of Ernie Stickles and his stupid friend Tad, because I spoke the truth, in high school against the conspiracy of the administration. And it's just been on and on from there. But I will tell you this, that I know that you're all on board with this climate change thing, but I have to tell you, you're under the ether because I work on Tybee Island, Georgia. I'm a code enforcement officer, so I'll say hello to my violators. Hello, violators. This is Timothy from Tybee Code Enforcement, and I'll be seeing you soon with my tactical pen and my ticket book. Okay, I make sure that tourists don't litter and that locals don't walk their dogs without leashes. That's a side note. Some call me a civil war denier. And I have come out against it in the past. It was mostly that I believe that possibly, and you can't prove me wrong, because people have tried, but that Mother and I have had long conversations about this, that perhaps it was just a domestic dispute that, brother against brother, that got blown out of proportion because of bad record keeping. And as soon as we start to really delve into the history, the forensic history, we may find that that's actually the case. But you can't prove me wrong. So regardless, we're talking about climate change. How could it be global warming if Mother got frostbite on her left pinky toe last time she was visiting family in northern Minnesota for a winter? Explain that. Huh? Really? They're ice fishing in Wisconsin? Come on.
I think, Timothy, what we're talking about is
for real?
World-renowned.
You're going to believe all these lies?
Well, world-renowned scientists have kind of proved with their data. What do you think, Lee? You want to fill in the gap here?
I mean, it's only 99.7% of scientists. So Timothy might have a point. There is 0.3% out there.
Yeah. 0.3 perhaps could be you're 0.3 of the comedians in the world, and you're the most banned. So maybe that is the truth. You don't know. Here's what I think. We hear a lot about the problems, but we don't hear the solutions. Want to hear some? I got some. Here we go. You want solutions? Probably not, because you'd rather whine about global warming while you're running your heat on a winter day. Okay, we could dump iron dust into the ocean and create phytoplankton that would choke all of our waterways. We could do that, and that would help. We could eradicate the Sahara Desert and the outback and put in eucalyptus forests, powered by or irrigated by desalinized water, powered by clean nuclear power plants. Okay. Then there's the idea of 20 million rockets carrying 16 trillion mirrors to reflect the rays of the sun back toward itself, like burning ants when we were kids. You remember that, Lee? Don't tell me you didn't do it. Don't be all wafy beta male and say I didn't burn any ants. Yes, you did. You're a boy.
We just hand a magnifying glass to every human. I think that'll do it.
Yes. You see how the solutions are plenty, but nobody wants to talk about them. And the only downside of the nuclear power plant idea with the irrigating with desalinized water of the eucalyptus forest that we've created is locust plagues, bird flu outbreaks, and the elimination of thousands of desert species. And it would only cost us $1 trillion.
That's
Listen.
great.
I am here in mother's basement, my roommate's basement. My roommate happens to have 23 cats and be my mom. And so you may not be getting all of this because of the technical difficulties that I had when I was setting up. I was supposed to get help from my mother's handsome friend, Moishe, who's a rabbi and also will never be my dad because he's really good at this stuff. But I'll tell you this, that you can call me a conspiracy theorist or a tinfoil hatter or whatever you want. But when I speak the truth, I just speak the truth to truth. For example, am I a flat earther? No. And I'm not a round earther either. I believe it's another shape that we're not aware of yet. Bam! Mind blown yet? That's a wrap for me. Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Hey, everyone. That was Tinfoil Timothy.
I have to go because I can hear Mother and her friends are setting up for a bridge game. It's where I get my news. They have bridge games and they talk about the world. And this is how I learn. And you may not know because you don't hear the truth upstairs when they're hot involved in a bridge game. That's where the truth comes from. I got to go.
All right. Thank you, Timothy. All right, everyone.
Hey, man, a lot of great points, I feel like.
Yes, a lot of good points. All right. Yeah, a lot of good points about climate change and about what it must be like to live in a mother's basement. Yeah. So back to what we were talking about with all the things that are happening right now, kind of coalescing, and thanks for being present for everyone for a little bit of humor through all this, because as we doom scroll Twitter, it just seems to get worse every day, doesn't it?
Yeah, in many ways.
Yeah. So where are we going from here? So we have a lot on our plates to parse out, a lot to do. But seriously, with climate change, what can we do? Like, what can a citizen do moving forward? What are some of the things that you talked about yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, so Peter brought up the idea of each of us decreasing our emissions, which I'm totally down for. I haven't owned a car in like 15 years, but I think that saying that that's the answer gives the false impression that big oil can continue to do what it does, that big ag can continue to destroy the planet the way it does, and that we will handle this each on our own if we just don't accept the plastic bag at the store. And I think that is misguided to say that's the answer, or switch your light bulbs or whatever. Now, he correctly said, well, I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm saying it's one of many things we need to do. And I agree with that. It's one of many things we need to do. But the focus right now, I mean, we're past the point where everybody decreasing their driving a little bit is gonna have a big enough impact. And so that means we're into the time when we need a full-on climate revolution, shifting the economy, the likes of which we haven't seen since World War II. But, World War II, when it was crucial, we were like, hey, we're changing everything. Our whole society is going to shift. The industrial base is going to shift. How you live your life is going to shift. Everything changed. The men are going to war. The women went into the factories. It was a full shift. And we decided it was important because Nazis. Well, how about it's important because we will not have a livable planet very soon. And for those who think climate change or climate chaos or climate catastrophe is something in the future, no, it's now. There are whole cities going up in flames. What was it? Paradise, California, that completely burned to the ground, killing however many people. There are cities.
Yeah, I've been evacuated twice for fires. It's
Have you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, you live in these areas out west, because I live out west, you're back east. It's now every summer, pretty much 3 to 4 months of the summer, we're getting ready for fire season now, or more, even longer. And
and even if you're not hit by the fire, breathing becomes difficult.
Oh yeah, you have to it's smoke. It's smoke so bad it looks like you have cloudy skies and whatnot. And so you're absolutely right. I mean, it's been. And look at Australia. Look at how they lost. How many species of animals were affected by the last wildfires?
I know, and I remember in Australia they did these glowing news reports about how the Australian government or whichever city was there was in helicopters dumping carrots down to the surviving wombats and things. And I'm like, okay, when we're at the point that we're dumping carrots out of helicopter to try and save the few wombats that still exist, you've already lost. All right. Like, you need more than a bag of carrots in a helicopter.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. It's amazing. Like, the way it's kind of sped up. And I think you mentioned the film, Don't Look Up. And I feel like we are living in David Sirota's kind of imagined,
yes,
drama, if you will.
Although I want some credit because I had Adam McKay. He apparently was a Redacted Tonight fan, and I had him on the interview show a few years ago, like 4 years ago, and we were talking about corporate corruption of government, how our government is corrupt, the lobbyists, et cetera. And I said, well, you got to make a movie about how our government is bought off by these lobbyists, by corporations. All you got to do is get Jennifer Lawrence attached, and then it'll be huge. And here's the movie where a lot of it is about government corruption and big tech buying out our government. And Jennifer Lawrence starred in it. So I think I deserve some royalties.
You deserve producer credit at least, if not consultant. Yes. Yeah. You should have been at the Academy Awards. You should have been on stage with Chris Rock. I mean, come on.
Slapping people up.
Yeah. But Peter had a good, Peter Kalmus had a good point about Don't Look Up. And I said, does it create change, or is it like, it was a hit movie, but it's, already moving past its prime and people move on with their lives. And he said, well, I think the real win is that it is now like in the zeitgeist. It's a common term. People say, oh my God, this is so Don't Look Up. It's now becoming common for people to reference a whole society ignoring head in the sand. We've got our head in the sands, and the sands are getting a lot hotter, and we're keeping our heads there. And so it really changes the way people think, the way people talk. And I think that is important. I felt the same about Occupy Wall Street.
Right. And here we are. And as a matter of fact, speaking of Occupy Wall Street, here we are at a 40-year high in inflation. And now they're talking about superinflation, and they're talking about food shortages and all of that. So it's interesting how things are. They're preparing us actually for another depression, economic depression.
Yeah. I mean,
subtly.
well, and the U.S. is a waning empire that if we actually dealt with it like adults, if we did adulting as a government, then we would try and shift so that we could be a successful society on our own and not have to exploit other countries to achieve everything, not have to have sweatshop workers make all our garments in order for that to make the most profit for corporate America. But we're not dealing with it like that. Instead, we're creating proxy wars. We're trying to separate other countries from cooperating with each other. Russia was obviously going to have a lot, or had begun a lot of economic cooperation with Germany and France. And we are creating these wars in order to interrupt that process so that we can continue to keep a lot of Europe as a feudal state and continue to keep a lot of these countries in our pocket under our central banking system. So It really, and of course, all this has ramifications. It ripples throughout the whole world, and that is part of the reason that we're seeing the increase in gas prices, the increase in inflation, and it really is like a pathetic way to go about things. But we are a cornered tiger in late stage capitalism, and rather than go down calmly and create a functioning society, we have decided to lash out.
Yeah, it's interesting, like going to the unipolar versus multipolar world. I mean, it's obvious that Russia and China and some other, the Eastern multipolar world was emerging, economic markets are emerging, and things are shifting that way. So why wouldn't we want to integrate with that momentum and create, a living for everyone and create, prosperity rather than keep it, unipolar and the West dominating, because it's not sustainable.
Yeah, well, the reason why. The reason why is because the richest people in the world want to continue being the richest people in the world. It's never enough. We have a system that is, uniquely structured to benefit and prop up sociopaths. And I mean that in the literal sense of they do not have empathy for their victims. And if you look at even just a corporate structure is essentially a totalitarian structure. And who gets to that boardroom? And some of these corporations are more powerful than most countries. Who gets to that boardroom? Well, it is almost exclusively the people who were the most sociopathic, the ones willing to step on the most throats, harm the most people, knock the most people out of the way. The people that get in that boardroom are not the, guy who helps the grandma across the street or lets people merge in front of him in traffic. All right. It's the guy who figures out how to tie 3 grandmas to his skateboard so he gets to work on time. It really is. So we end up with these sociopaths running the show, and they want to maintain their hegemony. They are not going to back down an inch to a multipolar world where countries have sovereignty and can worry about their own citizens and are able to work with each other. Instead, they just push this toxic nationalism that, because someone was born across a line in the desert that's the other side of the line from that you're on. Therefore, they are hated and evil and have to be destroyed.
Yeah, it's amazing how the narrative even gets narrowed to only include, to basically, well, like what they did to Russia, right? I'm trying to think. The biggest example of just the way they're trying to cancel the whole country, right? Taking away the astronaut from Russia, who was the first man in space, Yuri, and they took away his medals as if that means something in the West. And they banned Russian cats from international competition.
I just saw the other day or today that Nestle has said they will stop shipping Kit Kats to Russia, but they're going to continue shipping everything else. But they're pretty sure they will be able to defeat Russia in this proxy war by ceasing Kit Kat shipments.
Oh, you can't live without the Kit Kats, right? Yeah, that's right. Oh my God. Yeah, candy bars. We're gonna keep the candy bars out of Russia. And what was the other? It was recent. It was the Boston Marathon. They anyone with Belarusian or Russian nationality was not allowed to participate.
Is that true?
Yeah. And it's just, but they gave a little caveat that if you were also a U.S. citizen, then you were allowed. But if you were, still a Russian citizen or Belarusian, you weren't allowed. And it's amazing. The people that are really for this and that are kind of propagating it are actually, what would you consider the woke crowd or whatever, and it's bigotry and it's xenophobia. It's amazing.
Straight up. And, you'd think we'd learn a little from our history. We've done this many times before. We did it against not just Germany, but Germans in America in World War I and II. But,
and Japanese. Mm-hmm.
And Japanese and put them in internment camps, stole all their property, threw bricks through all the German food and, restaurant windows. changed all the name of things to, the hamburger became the Liberty Burger or whatever. And even German measles apparently became Liberty measles. So, at what point are you doing this shit and you're like, wow, we've lost our minds. We are out of our goddamn minds.
Well, I think that's just like the ultimate propaganda, right? You put it into, it permeates everything. Everything you do, eat, think, where you work, how you spend your recreation time, everything is submerged with this propaganda that this is bad and we are good. And that's that. And you either get on board and you think like that, or you're going to be considered a traitor. And, that's what happened, I think, to Tulsi Gabbard and to Tucker Carlson. And I rarely ever agree with anything Tucker Carlson has ever had to say, but he made some pretty valid points about the recent, conflict in Ukraine. And I mean, he was saying, this isn't what we should be doing, and trying to say that. And they called him a traitor and said he should be, I think it was a US senator said he should be investigated for treason.
Well, yeah. And isn't that what's incredible is here's a guy who day in and day out does one of the most watched shows on television and spouts racist garbage nonsense. But what is the thing that really gets him in trouble is saying we shouldn't be at war in Ukraine. Right. And we should negotiate a peace rather than just send weapons to basically use the Ukrainians as cannon fodder in a proxy war. That's the thing that's over the line for our system. All that other stuff, the racist crap he does, that's all acceptable.
Yeah. It's been pretty amazing. And so you have like this strange thing going, well, what they say is that in the Biden administration, there's two different thoughts going on with the hawks. There's some that want to go after Russia and some, and then there's Jake Sullivan, who's all about China, going after China. So we kind of have both narratives happening right now where we're villainizing whole nations and whole cultures.
I love that those are the two sides of the Biden foreign policy. Yeah. Either you want to destroy Russia or you want to destroy China. There's no one in the room who's like, what if we don't destroy anyone? What if we let people live and, listen to John Lennon's song Imagine over and over until we start to actually put it into action?
Or create innovation and do, we're on the verge of so much innovation and interesting things that are happening, including, ways that we could save the planet. And we're not doing that. Instead, we're not even having any kind of climate justice or climate change discussions, as we were mentioning earlier. So it's amazing. Yeah.
I mean, the lack of press, the person I interviewed, you mentioned Peter Kalmus, said that he had expected after he got arrested that there might be, he actually took the day off work because he was expecting after I get arrested, there'll probably be a few interviews I have to do about why NASA climate scientists are now getting arrested. And he said he had 0 interviews. I mean, he did an interview with me, but he meant mainstream media interviews. And no one contacted, no one from the mainstream media. I remember a year ago, I did a segment on Redacted Night where I showed one of the main news programs like Frontline or one of them, NBC Nightly News, did 12 minutes or something on the wildfires in California and how terrible they were, like a full half a show on how horrible it is there, how terrible the fires are. First of all, they never say the words climate change or global warming in the entire 15 minutes of how terrible these wildfires are. Secondly, they kept saying, oh, these are historic fires. I'm thinking if they happen every year, they're no longer historic. They're the norm. It's like, stop acting like these are historic.
Yeah, exactly. Like the heat waves that have been happening and the droughts. Yeah, no, it's not. It's because of what we're, doing to the climate and to the environment. It's amazing. Yeah. So the pandemic dominated the mainstream media. And then, of course, came the war in Ukraine. And now that's the focus. And of course, making Russia the bad, actor alone in this. And now what I noticed, you were talking about lack of coverage. What just happened, it was interestingly, about 3 weeks ago, I posted, hey, everyone, I think something's going to happen in Pakistan because Khan, the prime minister, had spoken out against the Western Empire and then turned around to Russia and said, okay, and bought some fuel and bought some wheat. And I thought, that's not going to go over well. And I posted, I wonder if there's going to be a coup in Pakistan. And I got jumped on. Like people were like just jumping on me, like, don't talk about that. You don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I think there's some CIA activity there. And then, well, you know what happened? There's been zero coverage. I looked in the mainstream media, nothing really.
There's been coverage, well, not tons, but a little coverage about him losing the no confidence vote or whatever. But
that's it.
You're right that they're not going to, they would never tie the threads together. They would never say, maybe this is connected to him allying with Russia or buying wheat or whatever. Mm-hmm. They never connect those things. And since you mentioned Pakistan, I did coverage on how every country that has dropped the petrodollar or even started to drop the petrodollar, we invade or coup or bomb or, it happened with Iraq and Syria and Libya and everyone that goes outside of the dollar, goes outside of our central banking, we destroy them. And my favorite example, because of how hilarious it was, and this happened under Trump, Pakistan dropped the dollar in trade with China or oil trade with China or something like that. And the following day, Pakistan, by the U.S., added them to the list of countries that violate religious freedom. And I love that those two were connected. You have dropped the dollar, which is our religion. And so we are going to add you to the list of countries that violate religious freedom. Meanwhile, of course, the U.S. supports 70% of the world's dictatorships. So.
Well, there you have it. There you have it. And they're not even, and now look what happened with Venezuela. We went to Venezuela and they said no, but I worry about Venezuela now. Now Pakistan's done. We've been trying Venezuela
for a while.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see, but it's anyone who doesn't bend the knee to the empire, you're right. There are consequences. Especially if they publicly make an outcry about it, like Macron did. He publicly said, that Pakistan was not Western slaves, and 2 weeks later he's gone. So, yeah, it's interesting. And what I noticed too when I saw the RT thing kind of happen, when everything kind of fell apart with RT and it being censored and licenses being pulled, all of a sudden there was this chorus of Britain, of England, the US, and Germany, and they were all kind of simultaneously villainizing RT. So it was interesting how the chorus just remains the US, Europe, and these few countries with the most economic power.
Yeah. They all give in, and Germany and France tried for a bit to not give in to the US proxy war desires. They tried to say, let's sort this out. Let's find a workable solution to this. But the U.S. quickly was able to get them to collapse to our belligerence.
What's been lost in all the coverage is you're exactly right. The summit right before the outbreak of the war happened on the 24th of February, right that week before, there was supposed to be a summit with the U.S. and with Russia, and the U.S. canceled it, not Russia. But what's been lost in this is how there's been no diplomatic inroads made before, during, or since. It just seems to be like the media is frothing at the mouth, for war. And if you watch like some of the montages you see of the media, it's like, when are we going to have a no-fly zone? But
well, and a lot of Americans, what was it, 77% support a no-fly zone because they don't understand a no-fly zone is not a peaceful thing. It basically is nuclear war with Russia. It's saying that NATO jets need to shoot down Russian jets that are in the area they don't want them to be, which is essentially nuclear war or very close. So a lot of people don't understand this, and then you have the clips put together of our mainstream media that all they do is just keep pestering the Biden administration for basically more war, more guns, more weapons, send it all over there. And I think it's a combination. Some of these reporters may be legitimately ignorant. You probably have worked with more of them in the past than I have, but and then some of them,
they're mostly blocked on my phone.
yeah. And then some of them understand how this hegemony works, and they're just going along with the U.S. State Department line.
Yeah. And I find it hard to believe that they go for this, but from my experience, I was villainized, right? I came forward about something about, what happened to me, about an experience. And then I was made to be a villain, such a villain that it didn't matter what happened to me. Even if you believed what happened to me, you didn't like me. You didn't care, right? You didn't care that it happened. But that's what they do on a bigger level to Russia and to other countries that they want to, make demonize or whatever, or marginalize and silence. So Russia's on that list. Well, now India's in trouble. As of today, India hasn't been towing the line. So now we're
going after them. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, we are clearly the most rogue nation in the world. We like to say other nations are rogue nations, but in fact, we are the ones that stand out. We don't join, a lot of international global deals that are struck. We don't join the International Criminal Court. We, in every way, we pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord.
We want in the ICC. We want the ICC to go after Putin and go after.
Yeah.
Right?
Even though our Congress passed the Hague Invasion Act, in which we're going to literally, they said they would invade the Netherlands if they ever prosecuted an American for war crimes. And I don't know what that war would look like. Windmill powered bikes throwing wooden shoes at people, but it is just, we are the rogue nation, and we're getting completely. Slowly, I think a lot of the world is waking up to this, and we are becoming, we're becoming an international leper. I think, yes, the country's governments, the ruling elite, are still caving to a lot of what America wants, but the world in general is understanding that we are the rogue nation.
Yeah, absolutely. We are the police. That's for sure. So Lee, you have a lot coming up, as far as shows or what's going on with you. Where can people find you, and how can they support your work? Because your work is important. And there were many of us that watched your show all the time and loved it. And we want to keep watching you. So where can we find you?
Thank you so much. So when everything shut down, I quickly created a Patreon, patreon.com/Lee Camp. And people can get exclusive content and go over and join me there. And all of my stuff will be up there. But in moving forward, I do have a new show I'm working on. I'll be announcing that soon. It will never be what Redacted Tonight was. It will never be in a multi-million-dollar news studio and that kind of thing. But hopefully it'll be, an internet show that people really enjoy and get the same kind of passion and message and comedy out of it. So that is my goal, and I will be announcing something soon. So if people go over to patreon.com/Lee Camp, they can follow all of those updates.
Very good. All right. Well, I just want to thank you so much for hanging out with me today and hanging out with Tinfoil Timothy, having a little bit of a smile in the midst of all this. And, I've always loved your comedy, and I look forward to seeing you. Are you going to do anything on the road, or are you not doing road comic stuff at this point?
Not much. I'm working on maybe some European dates, but
Ooh.
I don't know. It's a combination of how hard I've been working with all the shows and everything that I haven't been able to focus on stand up. But on top of that, it was like COVID just made everything seem so unsure. You'd set a date and then something would change and you have to cancel the date. And so right. I haven't gotten back into the stand up touring, but of course it's my first love, and I'd love to get back to that.
Yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good. And I'm sure you'd have a huge audience following you. So, all right. Well, thank you. And I want to say a shout out to Oz, to B&B Engineering. Thank you so much for helping me, because I couldn't do any of the tech on this. It's magical. It just magically appears and does things. So thank you. And thank you to Tinfoil Timothy. And you can find him on Instagram on barefootcomedy.com. And that's Colin Moulton is the comedian. And so I want to thank everyone for showing up here today and giving your support and love to Lee Camp. He's one of the good ones. He's one of the real ones. Keep following him. Follow him on social media, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Tara. Keep fighting.